morning and or afternoon. Today is Wednesday, the 5th of August, 2020. I'm Brock Jennings.
And I'm Peter Clark.
And this is your friendly neighborhood Lutheran theology podcast, Stumbling Block.
Woo woo.
And apparently every week now I'm just going to do the Spider-Man intro for our intro. So, listeners, I hope you forgive me. Well, we have a brief announcement beginning today, and that is we are changing our format just a little bit. When the pandemic first hit on the scene, we started recording twice a week. Mm-hmm. And then we did that for a good while, a couple months at least, right, Peter?
With guests and stuff.
With guests, it was lovely. We have some plans for more guests in the future, but that proved to ultimately be untenable. Mm-hmm. And now we've decided we need to slow down just a little bit, so we're going to try this every 2 weeks for a while.
Yep.
And we're going to see how that works, and then maybe we shift back to every week as time goes on. Maybe we keep the bi-weekly format. That remains to be seen. But in any case, you got a lot of us during the pandemic, and now we're slowing down a bit. It doesn't have to do with anything of losing listenership, I don't think, does it, Peter?
No, it has to do with gaining, a stay-at-home child for the school year.
Yeah, gaining a stay-at-home child for the school year on Peter's part. And the realities of me working on my dissertation, to do it twice in a week certainly is not sustainable long term. Once a week might be in the future, but we'll see how it goes.
Yep.
So, Peter, I have to ask you something today. I need your help. But before I do that, I have one more announcement that I just thought of.
Oh, dear.
I passed my Hebrew exam.
Hooray!
The written exam was terrible. Frankly, I made 23 mistakes. It was a very bad day. I allowed my nerves to get the better of me, and I forgot everything I learned.
That happens.
Was sitting in this big old auditorium that I'd never been in before. Because, as a doctoral student, I don't attend classes.
No.
So it's not like I'm going to lectures and things.
Right.
I was seeing people in person that I'd only seen via Zoom, right? So there was that spatial stuff. The seats that I was in for the exam, it was a little cramped. I'm cursed with slightly long legs. So, all of those spatial things happened. Plus, I was getting sick, not with corona. It was just your common cold. How do I know this? Because the people that I caught it from all got tested for corona, and they were negative. So, there we go.
Which, fascinatingly, the common cold is a coronavirus. Just not COVID-19.
Let's talk about that in a second.
Okay.
I don't want to derail us too far in the moment. That's all right, but hold that. Hold that, because that'll fit into what I need to ask you.
Okay.
And so the written exam was terrible, but I had a strong oral exam, and it's 50-50, weighted 50-50, so I passed.
Yeah.
And by passed means the requirement is satisfied. The only thing Tübingen wants out of me, apart from a dissertation, is that I have Latin, Hebrew, and Greek. And so Hebrew is done. I'm going back to my Latin over the summer. And then the review of Greek will happen sometime. I'm not worried about that in the moment.
Yeah.
Because I had Greek in seminary, thank you, God. Now, do I remember any of it? Well, that will be the next question. I am going to take Hebrew 2 in the fall, partly because I'm a glutton for punishment and for fun and joy because I love the language, but also partly because in Germany, when you do a theology doctorate, you hand your dissertation in and you defend your dissertation, but you also have brief oral exams in Old Testament, New Testament, church history, systematic theology, and practical theology. If your dissertation receives the grade of magna cum laude or higher, You then only are examined in 3 of those 5 subjects, but you still, either way, have what they call a rigorisum.
Mm-hmm.
So either way, it's looking like my rigorisum would involve an Old Testament component. So I want to make sure my Hebrew stays fresh enough that I'll pass the orals. Because I think it would be a strong waste of time to say I spent all this energy on Hebrew, then to forget it all just to have to spend an extra 6 months studying it again to prepare for my oral exams. That makes no sense whatsoever.
No.
So I'm going to keep on with Hebrew. Anyway, just wanted to update our listeners on that since our last episode was all about languages. I am in the throes of it. My life revolves around German, Hebrew, Latin, and Greek. Good Lutheran languages.
Yep.
At least good European Lutheran languages.
That's right.
As the Lutherans migrate en masse in the global South, that shifts what it means to be Lutheran, and obviously shifts the kinds of languages that are spoken.
Mm-hmm.
But in the context that I'm in as a Lutheran, these are fairly good Lutheran languages.
Yep.
Now, to what I need to ask you, Peter.
Yes.
Because I have been doing Hebrew, passing the exam by the skin of my teeth overall, but strongly in my orals. And resting from that and shifting, by the way, I've shifted in my research from gathering sources on Luther to working with James Cone now.
Mm-hmm.
What is going on in America? Please update me. I have had to step back and begin working on what I need to do in this context. So update me with what is going on in America.
What is going on in America? Oh my gosh.
It's related to your common cold as a form of COVID-19. Or excuse me, from a coronavirus. Which
right.
I didn't know.
Right. Well, I can tell you in Wisconsin here, we finally have a statewide mask mandate.
It took long enough. Is Scott Walker's still the governor up there? No, that's a few years ago, right?
That's quite a few years ago. Tony Evers. We have a Democrat for governor now.
Oh, there's hope. Okay.
But the legislature is still controlled by the Republicans, and they are threatening to overturn the mask mandate. But it's very interesting, very strange, because there are, of course, plenty of states with a Republican governor who have a mask mandate.
Yeah.
So it's only here in Wisconsin where the legislature is threatening to overturn it. Which is just fascinating.
And your son, Sam, has to be all online this year, or
we have opted him to all online. We have made that decision. He is going to an online charter school.
And would it be an in-person charter school after the virus?
No, after the virus, he'll go back to public school.
So it's just 1 year in a charter school.
Ideally, yes.
Okay.
Barring,
well,
I'm optimistic that the 2021-2022 school year will happen in person.
Yeah, we have some things that can happen in person again in Tübingen. I'm so happy Hebrew 2 will be in person. I said Gott sei Dank when the professor said that it was in person and not online. It's a terrible way to learn.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let me put it this way. Only online for extended periods of time is suboptimal.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't imagine doing it at Sam's age. I mean, you and I wouldn't have... let's go back to the 90s, Peter, when you and I were Sam's age.
Mm-hmm.
And let's say COVID-19 was COVID-1999 or something.
Mm-hmm.
What would our generation have done without all this technology?
We'd have been homeschooled.
Oh.
Which is I'm basically homeschooling him with support. Like, I don't have to pick the curriculum, I don't have to come up with the assignments, all these different things, but I'm still what's called his learning coach. So I'm still going to be We're going to set up his desk over here in the office, so that we can both be in here at the same time, so that I'm there to provide support and to be physically present and all that kind of stuff. So it's an advanced form of homeschooling.
So what do you think about homeschooling in general?
I have mixed feelings about it. I know some kids who've been homeschooled and did very well, and I've known some kids who've been homeschooled and did very poorly. I think it's very much up to individuals. It makes a lot of sense if you're homesteading out in the middle of nowhere, then absolutely homeschooling is the way to go. I think I don't know, and I think in these current situations, if you aren't lucky enough to have access to a program like we have access to, with an online charter school that we're able to sign Sam up for and get support, and they've sent us a laptop and they're sending us textbooks and all that kind of stuff, then homeschooling would basically be kind of your only option in this time. But it is an option afforded more to those with privilege than those without.
I'd never really thought of homeschool as a notion of privilege. I'd always thought of it as what conservative evangelicals did when they were mad at evolution and such.
Oh, homeschooling goes way before that. In fact, I know some people who homeschooled because the schools weren't teaching a progressive enough curriculum. In the South and things like that, if we had remained in Tennessee, there's a strong chance I would have been homeschooled for at least part of my life, because the curriculum was too conservative.
Mm-hmm. How is that legal to have such a conservative curriculum?
Because it's up to the states.
Oh, forget I'm in America again. Well, we have it too, but they have states in Germany too, but it's not nearly as bad as in the U.S. Oh God, it's up to the states, and so you get these conservative evangelical Republicans in office.
Yep, and
then you can teach the controversy. I hate this argument of the right. I'm so tired of that, because it's such an arrogant argument. Because it says that people with no scientific training know more than scientists.
Was it? I'm trying to think. I think it was Asimov who said the problem we have in the United States is that your ignorance is equal to my knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about this homeschooling thing, and I'm imagining myself after I get my doctorate and marrying somebody and wanting to homeschool our child. But
the problem then is you have to be making enough money. This is why it's a matter of privilege. You have to be making enough money for someone to stay home with the children.
Well, yes, but I wasn't even thinking about that aspect. I was thinking more, I better be marrying an atomic physicist then, because me attempting to homeschool a child in math, that ain't happening.
There's a lot of resources for that stuff now. There's a lot of really good homeschooling resources, actually.
Doesn't mean I could teach it. How on earth, I cannot imagine trying to teach my child something like that. And by that point, I would have a doctorate, and I would be saying, I don't know what I'm doing. So I better be marrying a physicist.
It is... Most commonly, people homeschool during elementary school.
Oh, well, I mean, I can do fifth grade level math, I guess.
Yeah, so you're only going up through fifth level math and concepts and things like that. And so actually one of the things that Kate and I are aware of, that we're vitally aware of, is the shortcomings of the curriculum we're using in terms of social studies and things like that. That it's written by a bunch of old white dudes, and so we're getting other resources as well to teach Sam more history than that. But we probably would have been doing that in a public school anyway.
Why in a public school?
Well, because
The public school ought to have less of the old white men.
right, but they still probably wouldn't teach the Tulsa race riots.
Yeah.
They still probably wouldn't teach about the labor movement, things like that. You know, the depths of the labor movement anyway, about how people died for the labor movement.
I agree with this in premise. I am uncomfortable in general with the notion of homeschooling. But I'd overhaul the whole, well, so would you, I'm sure. The whole notion of teacher training in America is ridiculous because I started out in teacher education, actually. I started out at university in that way, so I know a little bit about it, enough to know that this is... you can't have your teachers be experts, right? Your teachers are, thanks to No Child Left Behind and other such nonsense, it's all standardized testing.
Yeah.
And now colleges, thank God, are starting to move away from the ACT and the SAT.
Mm-hmm. But one of the things I'm actually really looking forward to this year, is some of the alternative learning that I'll be able to engage with in SAM in our sort of semi-homeschool.
What do you? Every time somebody says alternative learning, I raise an eyebrow. What is that?
Well, like actually getting out into nature to learn about nature, and like for geography, actually like mapping streets and like teaching him how to read a map, and then putting that into practice when we're driving, and being like, "Here's a map. Tell me where to go."
Or that sounds horrible.
Or like for gym class, because there is a gym requirement. There's a physical education requirement in the state. So I have to log physical education hours.
Oh, God.
Well, we can go canoeing together for that. Or we can go biking together for that, or things like that. We can go do non-traditional physical education stuff for it.
I know why I'm a little not so much with you doing this, but isn't it weird? You're going to be his dad and his teacher.
That's only really weird in a modern sense, you know. Public education's only a couple centuries old.
Yeah, but I mean, in Luther's day, when they went and studied Latin and got caned when they, misbehaved in class, that wasn't their parents doing it.
No, but that was when you went to school a little older then. Right? Then you were expected to come with a certain amount of knowledge imparted to you by your parents. Your parents taught you how to read. Your parents taught you basic math.
I guess I'm such a... In this case, I would say I am quite Lutheran in this regard. Put it as a public good, as a role of the state. I mean that in the Lutheran sense, not in the American sense of state. You send people to school and you trust the teachers and you pay the teachers and and there's a difference there, right? That's not the realm of the home. That's the realm of the politic, of the government, of the there's a different emphasis there than on the parent being the child's primary teacher, because again, my fear right now is not the case you're telling me about. That actually sounds fascinating, alternative learning and all that. It has to do with these conservative evangelicals. How do you, with homeschooling, how do you ensure that it is education and not religious indoctrination?
Well, there are tests and bars and things like that you have to clear. I mean, there still are state tests you have to take. You just have to take them differently. You don't take them in a classroom. You take them at a special testing center. I mean, we still have that. We have that in the United States, and homeschool students still have to meet those bars.
I didn't know that. That's
Yeah.
encouraging.
Like we're probably going to have to figure out, because there is a battery of standardized tests I think you have to take in 5th grade, and so we're going to have to figure out getting Sam to take those.
God. Did you have to take all those in 5th grade? I can't remember if I did.
Yeah, oh yeah. I went to school in Minnesota. I had to take standardized tests almost every year.
Yeah, I think I took something in 5th grade. I can't remember. ISAT or Illinois State Achievement Test or whatever. And then they had I can't remember. There was one in middle school, but in high school they had the Prairie State Achievement Exam, and then you had which is now gone by the wayside. And then I took the ACT, colored in the dots for the math, by the way, because I was so stressed.
What'd you get on your ACT?
I can tell you overall, actually, if you're so inclined.
I am so inclined.
When I moved to Germany, I thought I needed a high school certificate to begin my doctorate, because in Germany everything's about the Abitur. Well, we don't have the Abitur in the United States, but we have these things called high school diplomas. So I had to get I didn't have to in the long run, because they were like, you have 3 master's degrees and 2 bachelors. You really don't have to worry about this. And I'm like, and I was like, you could have told me this before I, called my high school for the first time in 15 years and said,
right.
So, sidebar, I never really looked that great on standardized tests. I've never done well on them. I've never been a test taker in general. And so one moment while I find my document here.
No problem. I am an excellent standardized test taker.
Yeah, I'm not. What I am good at is writing essays. Standardized tests, I argue with him. So, in English, I had a 30.
That's not bad.
Probably the closest probably to to being accurate, as far as standard tests go. Math, I had a 17.
Oh, wow.
Because I colored in the dots, because they looked pretty, because I was so nervous. Reading, I had a 25, and I think that's because even back then, I argued with the multiple choice questions, even as a junior in high school. That's why I was a great history major in college, because I would always argue with the question. Science, I had a 26, which surprises me. It was so high. Perhaps my science skills were better than I thought.
Well, the science section is usually mostly about reading graphs.
Apparently, I was better at reading graphs back then than I am now. Every time, even now in theology texts, if somebody uses a graph, I get anxious. And my overall was a 25.
Okay, not bad, not bad.
Considering how crappy I am on standardized tests, yeah. And what was yours?
I got a 34 overall out of 36.
Oh, jeez. Wow.
And I got a 36 in my math and science sections.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I'm a very good standardized test taker.
I am a very poor standardized test taker.
I got the...
With scores like that, you could have gone to Harvard.
Yep.
Why didn't you?
Don't know. I didn't want to.
Okay, then.
As simple as that, I didn't want to. I did go to one of the finest small private Christian schools in the nation. But then I completely slacked off. And graduated with a B- average.
I graduated Bradley with a 3.73.
2.6.
Oh, wow. Look at those differences with both of us, though.
Yeah.
Look at those really strong differences.
Yep.
With what we're talking about here.
I actually had to write a letter explaining my low GPA to get into seminary.
Interesting. And what did you say? I was in my wild and fruitless youth?
Yep, that was a big part of it, along with the fact that my senior year, my fiance dumped me, and I just went...
By the way, my GRE scores.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you my GRE scores too, because you're going to see something very similar. Meanwhile, our listeners going, "Why are they doing this?" But it actually does prove a point on education here. So in the verbal of the GRE, I had a 154, which is meh. Okay. I mean, again, I argued with the questions.
Mm-hmm.
I did the very thing they tell you not to do, right? You read this GRE prep book. Don't argue with the questions.
Right. It's, well, and I'm very, very good at BS, too, which helps. So, I got a 5 on my AP European History exam. For those who don't know, that's the highest score you can get.
Mm-hmm.
And I just completely pulled the essay out of my butt.
Okay, well, I'm going to keep going with the GRE because this is rather amusing. So I got a 154 on the verbal, which is, meh, it's okay. It's decent enough to get into a mid-tier graduate school, It wouldn't get into Yale with that. Math, I got a 137. Again, I colored in the dots to make it look pretty. And in writing essays, I was in the top 7% in the nation.
Nice. Very nice.
Because there, I actually got to make an argument. Mm-hmm. Rather than sitting around and, well, it could be this word. Well, maybe it's that word. Well, are they tricking me? I hate standardized tests, Peter. I hate them. I hate them. I hate them. With the burning passion of 1,000 suns, I hate them. Thank you, Lord Jesus, that not again in my academic career, whatever I do in my academic career, will I ever need to take, as far as I know, a standardized test in order to get a degree. Mm-hmm. There's no standardized test for the doctorate. There's no multiple choice. It's an oral exam.
Yep.
There's thank you, Lord Jesus, because that GRE thing, oh my God. And then I did something else. So I finished up the test. I think the last thing I did was either the math or the essay. I can't remember. I think it was the essay. And you have like 6 or 7 hours of testing. You're looking at this computer screen. You've got these big headphones on. And, they got cameras in the room to make sure you're not cheating because...
Yep, just like when I took the postal exam.
Ugh. Interesting. You took the postal exam. I bet you passed it with flying colors.
I did, and I accidentally skipped an entire section.
Well,
I skipped an entire section, like almost like a fifth of the postal exam, and I still passed with flying colors.
So you can work for the post office then?
I don't want to work where they want me to work.
Okay, but you could theoretically.
I could theoretically work for the post office, but they don't have any retail openings.
Okay.
They wanted me to work as a mail sorter on the third shift.
I mean, that kind of sounds fun, but
But I have a family.
Third shift does not sound fun. So in the GRE, I've taken this thing for 6 or 7 hours. I'm miserable. I'm going. This has nothing to do with, anything. Yeah. Like this is an American phenomenon, right? Mm-hmm. This does not exist in Europe. Of course, arguing that way when I was applying to American schools was not a very good argument.
No.
It's like, come on, Brach, if you want to get an American doctorate, you have to play by their rules. And the same applies to Germany, of course.
Of course.
But I didn't know I was going to be in Germany. So anyway, then at the end of the testing session, I did what you're not supposed to do. I canceled my scores. I hit the wrong button because it was all about the computer, and I canceled them. So I had to pay. I can't remember how much I had to pay.
They're not cheap.
It was a decent amount of money for somebody to press a button and give me my scores.
Mm-hmm.
Had to then pay extra to rush them because the application due date for the Graduate Theological Union, where I was then applying to the PhD, was soon to finish. And all of that heartache and $200 spent to take the damn test, and the GTU didn't even admit me. But now, nearly 6 years later, I find it all very, very funny, because guess how many times Jürgen Moltmann has asked me about my GRE score?
0. Why would he?
I would even bet he doesn't know what it is.
Oh, but he doesn't care.
Precisely, and that's why it's so funny. Right? I can only say that because I am doing a German doctorate. Even at LSTC, when I applied to the doctorate there, they had to send in these GRE scores. And I told them, and because I was applying to a seminary, I felt like I could say this and I could get away with it. I said, if you all base my intelligence on my standardized tests, I will not look like I will succeed in your program. I just want to tell you that up front.
Mm-hmm.
Fortunately for me, they believed me and they let me in.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason I know my GRE scores off the bat, by the way, is because my transcripts from LSTC, the GRE scores are on there.
Yep.
It's like, oh my Lord.
Standardized tests are very important in America.
Meanwhile, Europeans look at this and go, what are you all doing? And I go, thank you, Lord Jesus, that I'm doing a doctorate in Germany where it doesn't matter. And they look at me and they say, you have all these academic degrees, so you can clearly do this. And that's what they judge me on, and not the standardized tests.
Yep. Yep.
So they don't haunt me as much as they could. They only haunt me if I look at my transcripts.
Yeah.
And now with colleges in America, though, you're just saying standardized testing is so important in America. Well, now all these universities are moving away from them.
We're moving away from those specific ones. I suspect something will replace them. I'm not sure what.
Oh, no.
I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen next because standardized tests have been so important as such a benchmark.
Only for 100 years.
I know. I know.
That's a blink of an eye.
What I'm saying is that college admissions departments are going to have to retool themselves somehow, and I'm not sure what their new requirements are going to be.
You can have exams in high school. I'm not anti-exams. I'm anti-standardized tests.
Yeah. Yeah, but so is it going to be based... So the problem is that GPA isn't standardized throughout the country.
Well, grades are an abomination to the Lord and should be eliminated anyway.
Well, then how do you know if someone should get into college?
The letter of recommendation based on the teacher. I would weight it on that. What's that called? It's not evaluative learning. It's I don't remember what it's. Maybe it is evaluative learning, but where you have teachers write letters for students on how they did during the semester.
Mm-hmm. Now, but we don't currently do that in the U.S. We have to do a whole new set of training for teachers on how to do that. Right now, everything is grades based, and the problem is that some schools use weighted grades, some schools don't.
What's the difference? What are weighted grades?
Weighted grades are like based on your grade is weighted based on the difficulty of a class, on the difficulty of so like an AP class. So in some schools, it's possible to graduate with a 5.0.
It doesn't even make sense.
Well, because of weighted grades. If you get a 4.0 in a class with a weighted grade, it's worth like a 5.
No. This is a 19th century phenomenon, you know.
Grading. I know, but my high school didn't.
Yeah.
Have weighted grades. So the highest we could graduate with was a 4.0.
And you graduated with a 4.0, didn't you?
No, I didn't. I graduated with a 3.9.
I graduated with a 3.8. Whatever that means.
But so I had to make sure colleges knew that. when I was applying to them. Because it turned out the college I went to didn't have a GPA requirement. But
you mean they were actually concerned about your education, not about your marks?
The college I went to was concerned about whether or not you had enough money to pay for it.
They didn't give you scholarships?
You could get scholarships if you had a good enough GPA, but it wasn't part of their admissions policy.
Oh.
I had a scholarship my first year.
First year noted. And these... Okay, so weighted grades. Germany has grades. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 6. 6? Is there 6? I know anything below a 4 is failing because I just passed Hebrew by the skin of my teeth because of my written. Because the written was so bad. But they have, they certainly have grades, but the grades are standardized. Anybody that used the certain European credits and they transfer between all these countries, and it's it's a recognizable mark, and it.
Yeah, the grades aren't standardized in the U.S. There's not a standardized... If you don't use standardized testing, there's not a standardized way of saying how much someone has learned or how, I guess for lack of a better term, smart they are.
Oh, I don't think grades measure anything about smartness.
But you know what I mean, like how good they are at school or whatever.
I even would go so far, although I'm a revisionist. I'm a good revisionist pedagogue in this regard. I would even go so far as to say grades do not show you how good you are in school.
What do grades show you then?
That you can color in the lines and really nothing. Grades, particularly the higher you get in education, grades are meaningless. Now, with that being said, if I ever got a C during my advanced work, first of all, I wouldn't be allowed to stay. Not in Tübingen. I'm thinking of the U.S. I wouldn't be allowed to stay, but I'd just be devastated. And it's that we've been conditioned now as Americans. I don't know about the Germans, but as Americans, that everything revolves around the grade. But the grade on my Hebrew exam does not necessarily take into account what I actually learned about Hebrew this semester.
Right. No, I get that.
So I don't think grades at most could be one indicator. But it's one indicator of a more holistic picture.
Right, and to tie things back around, that's actually one of the arguments for people for homeschooling, is it allows for a more holistic education style.
Well, all right, but can't you get a holistic education style with the public school just without the grades?
It depends on the public school. You may not have access to that.
Yeah, true. I mean, I'm thinking about my own just thinking about my own work in college. I mean, throw high school out the window because who remembers it? I try not to.
I do. I peaked in high school. The only person with more pictures of themselves in my senior yearbook was my best friend, who was also the high school mascot.
Okay, then. I would have been a high school mascot if I could have been a big cat. That would have been fun.
He was the chesty lion.
Okay, then I would have wanted to be the high school mascot. But I just think of college, and then graduate school and seminary beyond that, and how much more I could have soaked up if I wasn't worried about getting those A's or B's or whatever.
Well, that's why I took seminary pass-fail. And I know it means that I'd have to get another master's degree if I ever wanted to progress any farther, but That's why I took seminary pass fail, was because then I didn't have to worry about those A's or B's. I was just...
I guess yeah, I mean, I'm with you, but I always took grades because I knew that I was going to graduate school beyond seminary.
Right.
I never really said it out loud because, you don't want to seem overconfident, but I just always had this sense that I was going to go on and that I was going to do it, right in a row, that I wasn't going to wait.
Right.
Which the ELCA doesn't really like anymore. They used to 30, 40 years ago, but now not so much. And so I always did everything for grades. I had a couple things that were pass-fail, but almost everything with me was grades because I needed that GPA.
Right.
And then when I went on beyond that, everything was grades as well, obviously, because in America, you can't have a PhD program without grades.
Right.
So that's all graded, and the only grade apart from the grade for the Hebrew, but the only grade now that I would have is the overall dissertation. If it's RITE, RITE, if it's maybe I don't think there's a cum laude, but yeah, there's a cum laude. I think a magna cum laude and a summa cum laude. Mm-hmm. And whatever that ends up being, that's the only grade I'll have.
Yeah. Well, it's like, the old thing, what do you call someone who got straight B's in medical school?
Smart?
Doctor.
But that actually scares me because in the hard sciences, so now I'm going to maybe talk out of both sides of my mouth a little bit. In the hard sciences, I would actually want a different kind of evaluation than I would in the humanities. Mm-hmm. I don't want my doctor that got D's and F's.
Well, you wouldn't make it to doctor if you got D's and F's. That's why I said straight B's. Even straight C's, you might not graduate.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know what medical school is like, really, except other than horrendously expensive.
It's pretty rigorous. I've had some friends who've been through it.
Yeah, I mean, I figured it was, but I would still be a little bit worried if my doctor, got C's.
Yeah, but that's the thing, right? Once they get out of medical school, you can't look up your doctor's transcript. They're your doctor. They're just doctor. They're just doctor. Once you graduate from medical school, you are doctor.
Well, frankly, once I pass Tübingen, it'll be the same.
Right.
It's not like anybody's gonna. Although I've now divulged it in public how bad I am at standardized tests, so this might come back to haunt me in 10 years. But there's no.
No, you'll be Dr. Brock Jennings.
Scary thought. Very scary thought. And in Germany, by the way, it becomes part of your name, your doctor title.
Wow.
Yeah, they take it that seriously. So it's it's a big deal. That's why they call it a promotion. Mm-hmm. It's a big, it's I don't know. That's kind of fun, but yeah, nobody's going to ask about what the grade is.
Yeah.
Nobody asks about what my grade on my master dissertation was.
Oh, God, that just reminded me of one of my favorite academic jokes.
What is that?
How do you get a master's in philosophy off your front doorstep?
Ask them what their grades were?
Pay them for the pizza.
Oh, it's hard. See, I don't think anybody in Germany would say that. I really don't, because education in Germany is assumed to have an intrinsic value.
Right.
One of the things I appreciate about this country, actually. I have had the question from... No, wait, no, that was a German American. I think only one or two Germans have asked me what I plan to do with my doctorate.
Hmm.
Whereas in America, and maybe some of my friends in the Stift asked me, do you want to be a professor? Do you want to stay in Germany? Do you want to return to the U.S.? Those kind of things. But I really can't remember, whereas in America, I tell somebody I'm getting a doctorate in theology, and they're, well, what are you doing that for? What are you going to do with that?
Yeah.
It's always the pragmatist defend your right to exist as an academic argument, and here, well, certainly not in a place known for humanities. I mean, my goodness, be like asking somebody from Oxford if they wanted, at least in terms of theology, if they wanted what they wanted to do with their theology degree. I mean, you just. Mm-hmm. It's nice to have that difference. I really don't think anybody would tell that joke, pay them for the pizza. Mm-hmm. Maybe I'm being a little defensive, but and well, here's why I'm being defensive. I'm not thinking about myself at the moment. I'm thinking about the person who's delivering the pizzas. Why is that considered such a dishonorable thing to do?
It's a low-paying minimum wage job, and in America, you're valued by how much money you make.
Capitalism is viciously evil.
It is. It really is.
Excuse my banality.
I mean, there's plenty of things like there's plenty of similar jokes about musicians and things like that, especially rock and roll band musicians. I don't know how many times I've heard the difference between a large pizza and a bass player.
What is it?
Large pizza can feed a family of 4.
Oh, it's just horrid. They're not even funny. They're really not even funny. I mean, I worked with somebody at Barnes & Noble who had a master's in music performance from Eastman.
Yep. Lots of people at Barnes & Noble have master's degrees.
Lots of people at Barnes & Noble have doctoral degrees.
Yep.
I only had one master's at the time working there, and I was with a bunch of other people who, similarly qualified.
Yeah, I actually applied to Barnes & Noble once, and I was told I basically couldn't get into that branch without a master's degree.
Yeah. What's wrong with that? I like my booksellers to be educated. They might actually be able to discuss books with me instead of, corporate design stuff.
Right. Well, the point is, but it's still considered a low wage retail job.
Yeah, it was pretty low wage, I have to admit.
And it's not where you'd expect to find people with a master's degree in a low wage retail job. Right? It was like when I worked at Staples. What level of education do you expect people who work at Staples to have at an office supply store?
Whatever level of education they've attained.
Almost universally, we had bachelor's degrees.
Great.
To run a cash register.
Why not? You have good conversations with the customers. You have you can talk about interesting things with them. You can, I don't think there's anything. What I think is unjust about all this is not being the cash worker. I think what's unjust is that we can't afford to pay people as a country in America $15 an hour as a minimum wage. Right. That's what I think is unjust.
Absolutely, that's unjust.
I think the minimum wage needs to be $20 an hour, frankly. That's even higher than Bernie Sanders wants it. And then you've got to, if you raise your bottom capacity, you've got a different argument for somebody working in Staples or Office Max or whatever who has a master's degree.
Yeah.
It's not about the or driving or the pizza driver. I mean, I don't understand why America as a society thinks that somebody who runs a cash register should never have a doctoral degree. Matter of fact, I knew somebody who had a PhD and ran the cash register next to me at Barnes & Noble.
Mm-hmm.
It was wonderful.
It's just, that's the stereotype. Anyway,
that's what we need to.
Sorry,
I have a meeting to go at 6 my time, but that's what we need to fight, Peter. in our generation. We need to fight this awful stereotype, and we need to, hold our heads high.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyway, when I'm living on the cardboard box with my cats but selling used books, you can laugh at me.
If we have a spare room, I'll invite you in.
Oh, thanks. But at least I have a doctorate degree. How do you get a doctor of theology off the steps?
I don't know. Give him $20.
Pretty much. Talk to you later.
All right. Until next time.
I'm Brach Jennings.
And I'm Peter Clark.
And this is Stumbling Block.
Stumbling Block is a production of Silver Turkey Studios. Our Patreon producer is Ben Dittman, our executive producer is Peter Clark, and our executive director is Brach Jennings. Our theme music is by Mirrors for Windows, and we are hosted by Podbean. We can be reached by email at stumblingblockpodcast@gmail.com. Please consider supporting us at patreon.com/stumblingblock. And as always, thank you for listening.